Well, good morning, distinguished guests, members of Defence, veterans, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Richard Cruz, and on behalf of the Council of the Australian War Memorial and staff, welcome and thank you for joining us here on this beautiful Canberra morning. Today we will dedicate the new Military Working Dog Memorial, Circling into Sleep. This day was purposely chosen as it marks the second National Animals in War Day. I would like to begin by acknowledging the following guests. Lieutenant Colonel Lisa Kelleher, representing the New Zealand High Commission. The Honourable Darren Chester, Minister for Veterans and Defence Personnel. The Honourable Mr Scott Buchholz, Assistant Minister for Road Safety and Freight Transport. The Honourable Mark Pearson, Animal Justice Party. Lieutenant General Rick Burr, representing the Chief of Defence Force. Air Commodore Andrew Elverson, representing the Chief of Air Force. Mr Craig Short, representing the Special Operations Commander, Australia. Mr Don Spinks, Commissioner, Department of Veterans Affairs. Ms Meg Green, National President of the War Widows Guild of Australia. Ms Pat McCabe, National President of the Australian Federation of Totally and Permanently Incapacitated Ex-Servicemen and Women. Mr Nigel Allsop, Chief Executive Officer, Australian War Animals Memorial Organisation. Mr Robert Jennings, President, the Australian Defence Force Trackers and War Dogs Association. Mr Ray Thomas, President of the RAF Dog Handlers Association. Mr Greg Kokoski, Chairman, Australian National Racing Pigeon Board. Mr Samuel Horden and family. We'd also like to acknowledge the many association representatives who are joining us here today, and the memorial artist Mr Steve Holland and contributor Mr Nick Stranks. I would like to begin this morning's proceedings by inviting Major General Brian Dawson, the Acting Director of the Australian War Memorial, to deliver the welcome.
Thanks very much, Richard. I welcome everybody here today to the memorial for this ceremony to dedicate the Military Working Dog Memorial. Let me first acknowledge the original custodians of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and welcome all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. Richard's already acknowledged the list of VIPs and dignitaries and guests that are honouring us with their presence today. Can I particularly note our New Zealand representative, Lieutenant Colonel Lisa Kelleher, the Chief of Army, Air Commodore Andrew Elverson, representing the Chief of Air Force, and Craig Short, representing the Special Operations Commander. And also, of course, Minister Chester and the Honourable Mr Scott Buchholz, Assistant Minister for Safety and Freight Transport. The Australian War Memorial is the national focus to remember all those Australians who have lost their lives in the service of our nation in war, those who have suffered, and the over 2 million Australians who have served in the Royal Australian Navy, the Australian Army and the Royal Australian Air Force. The rolls of honour in the commemorative area currently list the names of 102,888 men and women who have lost their lives in the service of our country. The memorial is a place of commemoration, as well as being a world-class museum and archive. The official war correspondent, Charles Bean, first conceived the idea of an Australian War Memorial and Museum in the darkest days on the Western Front in the First World War. In 1948, he summed up the memorial's mission and purpose with the words that have since become famous. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. And animals also served. Today we will dedicate the newest sculptural work to be installed in the memorial's gardens. The Military Working Dog Memorial, in which is interred the ashes of Military Working Dog number 426, but affectionately known as Aussie. The artist, Mr Stephen Holland, who is with us here today, has titled the work Circling into Sleep. The Military Working Dog Memorial is a circular piece of granite with a second tear-shaped piece of granite at the centre. Underneath the tear-shaped marble is the cavity in which Aussie's ashes have been interred early in December last year. 37 bronze paw prints have been inset into the granite in the pattern of a dog walking in a circle before it lays down to go to sleep. This in part symbolises the dog having taken its final resting place within the centre of the memorial. For the artist Stephen Holland, the paw prints are a direct connection to the dogs as they have been part of the creation process. Stephen Holland visited Holsworthy Barracks and the military workings dogs at the School of Military Engineering last year. There he worked with the dogs and handlers to explore the idea of the paw prints being a central design component of the memorial. The paw prints were created by the military working dog named Billy and her handler Corporal Kurzweil at the memorial's Mitchell Annex with the artist. And Billy is still serving with the School of Military Engineering. Holland then prepared moulds of Billy's paw prints and cast them in bronze. Stephen Holland is a West Australian. He studied at the Royal College of Art in London, the Canberra School of Art and Curtin University of Technology, and completed his Doctorate of Philosophy at the Australian National University in 2015. Stephen has a particular interest in animals and nature, and at the Royal College of Art he studied natural history illustration. In the form of sculpture, performance and drawing, he takes a critical view of the social, political and cultural construction of the lives of animals, and his sculptures employ a variety of approaches. In 2009, Stephen Holland completed the Animals in War Memorial, which was a joint project between the Australian War Memorial and the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and that is this sculpture here. The memorial commemorates those animals that served alongside Australians in all conflicts. It recognises the practical and psychological role animals have played during times of war and conflict. The memorial also has in its grounds sculptures commemorating the roles played by explosive detection dogs. The work is titled Elevation of the Senses by the artist Ewan Coates, and as well as a sculpture of Simpson and his donkey, which are in a prominent place at the front of the memorial. Today we also recognise the service of pigeons and their handlers throughout Australia's war history, with a plaque honouring the assistance provided by those winged heroes. The memorial is particularly grateful to Samuel Horden and the Horden family for their support of this particular sculptural works, and we thank them publicly for their significant contribution to this work today. I now call upon the Minister for Veterans and Defence Personnel, the Honourable Darryl Chester MP, to provide the commemorative address for today's dedication of Circling into Sleep, the memorial to working dogs. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brian, and how fitting we get a 10 cockatoo flyover halfway through your speech. Thank you for that welcome. Can I also join with you in acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we gather here today? Can I also, in that same spirit, recognise the men and women here in uniform and those who've worn the uniform in the past, and thank you for your service to our nation. In particular, thank you to your families who allowed you to fulfil that service so incredibly well throughout our nation's history. Can I acknowledge our very special guests here, the serving dog instructors, the handlers and the students, and of course their canine friends. Anyone who knows me or follows me on Twitter would realise that I have a dog of my own, a chocolate lab called Marlowe, who is far more popular than I'll ever be on social media. And as the Veterans Minister, one of the first things I undertook was to change the rules in relation to the provision of psychiatric assistance dogs to our veterans suffering from PTSD. That has been a major change in our department's approach to managing mental health issues, and it's been incredibly successful, and I have no doubt that that decision alone will help to save lives within our veteran community in the years ahead. So today's unveiling is something which is very close to my heart, and I recognise the Shadow Minister Shane Newman here, as well as my parliamentary colleague Scott Buckholz, for the work you do in support of the veterans community and our serving men and women. We're here to remember the service and the sacrifice of our four-legged heroes. And as you've just heard, for more than a century, Australians have gone to war with dogs by their side, and the dogs have endured the same hardships. They've faced the same dangers, and they've made the same sacrifices, sometimes the ultimate sacrifice. But they have become much more than capabilities. They have become companions. They have become mates. And anyone who has served in the Australian Defence Force will tell you, you do anything for your mates. So this is a special day, not only for our dogs of war. It is a national day for war animals and also remembers the service of our horses, of donkeys, cats and pigeons, to name just a few. And we all wear our purple poppies today with pride. It recognises as long as Australian troops have served on operations, they've had animals by their side as well. So as I look at this special memorial, I'm reminded of the unique place that dogs have held in our military history. The first official Australian war dog was called Bushy, described as a rough bush collie. The black and white canine was the mascot of the New South Wales Bushmen's Regiment. He travelled alongside those men to the Boer War, and after the war, after his war service was given, Bushy was gifted to Queen Victoria and lived out the rest of his life in English luxury. That's not bad for a dog born in the Blue Mountains. And Bushy is proof that even before Australia had a national military, our men of arms knew the value of their dogs. In the late stages of the First World War, the Australian Imperial Force used dogs extensively as messengers. And during the Second World War, we used German Shepherds to guard valuable military equipment and installations. But it wasn't until the mid-60s that Australian soldiers began properly training tracker dogs, which were invaluable in the jungles of Vietnam. 11 of them served in the combat teams. And we've continued to see military working dogs alongside Australian troops in places such as East Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan, explosive detection dogs, combat assault dogs and military police dogs. Time and again, ladies and gentlemen, they have proven they are much more than your average pet. Their senses of sight, sound and smell are far more attuned, and when required, they go beyond the call of duty. Of course, no dog serves alone. Their service is only matched by their handlers. That bond must be unbreakable. Now, as a dog owner myself, I acknowledge I'd do anything for my dog, Marlowe. But can you imagine that love and the trust that must be 1,000 times stronger in times of great stress in a military environment? I could spend hours actually telling you the stories of some of these dogs. They've been well documented, funnily enough. But I do want to pay special attention to the dog that Brian just mentioned, military working dog 426, or as his mates call him, Aussie. Aussie was an explosive detection dog, and in his own way, he is a four-legged record of Australian recent military history. His first deployment was to the Solomon Islands in 2004. He and his handler mostly supported cordon and search operations, as well as clearing buildings used for important meetings. When Aussie returned to Australia, he took part in Operation Acolyte, which was the military contribution to the 2006 Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. That same year, Aussie began the first of his deployments to Afghanistan, and he joined military patrols at a time beyond the wire as the ADF sought to bring security and stability to tank out. During one operation in 2009, he undoubtedly saved lives. His handler recalled Aussie making 3 finds: a rifle, boxes of ammunition, and a mortar bomb, wired up for use as an improvised explosive device. Who knows who could have been injured or killed if Aussie hadn't been there, a true Australian military hero. Aussie retired when he was 12 years old after serving his country for more than a decade. And like so many of his fellow dogs, he served unconditionally, faithfully and without complaint. Actually, that's a bit different to the soldiers I've met in recent times. They have a few complaints when they catch up with me. Not that many, but a few from time to time. But when Aussie retired, he was adopted by another former handler, Sergeant Alistair Lalever. And I'm told he spent his retirement playing in mud, chewing tennis balls and jumping into pools of water. And I see the retired Chief of Air Force here, Leo, playing in mud, chewing tennis balls and jumping into pools of water. Have you done any of those things in the last couple of years? None of the above. But Aussie passed away peacefully in 2017, and I know he's remembered fondly, especially by his former handlers who join us here today. But Aussie is with us now. His ashes have been interred under this memorial beside me. Like the remains of the unknown Australian soldier forever entombed in the Hall of Memory just behind you, this memorial stands as a permanent reminder of the sacrifices that Australian military working dogs have made. It honours the dogs that served and the ones that are still serving today. It reminds us of names like Cougar, Quake, Raz, Devil, Herbie, just some of the dogs that made the ultimate sacrifice. Because most importantly, this is a memorial to the dogs that didn't come home. You'll see the paw prints, and Brian just described the great work by our artist Steve. You'll see the paw prints which symbolise a dog coming to rest and the final lap of its surrounds. I say a heartfelt thank you to Steve for the work you've done on behalf of the Australian Government. To the dog handlers here today, we say thank you for your service. And to the dogs we've come to remember, we say good job. You've looked after your mates and now you can rest, lest we forget.
Thank you, Minister Chester. I'm now pleased to invite Mr Nigel Allsop, Chief Executive Officer of the Australian War Animals Memorial Organisation, to recite the poem Four-Legged Soldier.
Thank you, and before I start, could I also thank the service of all the dog handlers here today, and Alistair, wherever you are, a big thank you to your family, your wife and child in particular, for allowing this day to happen, of us being able to intern Aussie in the first place, so thank you very much. The poem is called My Four-Legged Soldier. You're a military dog, we're a lethal team, searching together for IEDs unseen. You're my friend, comrade, protector and guide. On call day and night, you serve always with pride. Together we walk, you obey my command. A four-legged soldier, look how proud you stand. In the midst of turmoil, you are often found. Man fears your presence when you stand your ground. I remember the day an IED you did find, to disarm and protect was utmost on your mind. You rallied to the fore with no fear in your heart. As a specialist war dog, you did your part. Thank you. You serve without question. You serve, your love has no need. You trust and protect me. You are a trusted friend. But there'll come a time when we'll both cease to be. So when I walk through God's gate, please be waiting for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Allsop. I would now like to invite Chaplain Mau Mau Monu to formally dedicate the Military Working Dog Memorial.
Gracious loving God, source of life and creator of all things, we gather today in this service to give thanks to the many blessings, the dedications and the unwavering sacrifice of our military serving dogs. We remember their endurance in time of danger and their commitment to the task at hand, even to the point of death, and in so doing save the lives of others. We pray for the friendship and companionship forged with those that cared for them. And as we pause to reflect and remember this morning, may we be reminded of what they have done, the legacy they left behind, and the enduring commitment and sacrifice in the service of our country. We do pray for the current serving dogs and their own families. And today we commit and dedicate this memorial in their honor and to the glory of God. We ask this in the name of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Monu. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. It's been our great privilege to host this very special event for you all here today. The memorial would like to thank the following people for their support: Warrant Officer Cameron Elliott, EDD Capability Manager, Chaplain Mau Mau Monu, the Band of the Royal Military College Duntroon, and Mr Stephen Davey. We would also like to thank the student EED handlers from the Australian Defence Force, Corporal Ian Moss, Sapper Luke Saxton, Leading Aircraftsman Bradley Evans, and Leading Aircraftman Gregory Chance, and representing the New Zealand Defence Force, Lance Corporal Malin Broderick. Throughout today's dedication, there's been a memorial photographer taking photographs. To view these images, please visit the memorial's website and the Flickr page. Ladies and gentlemen, that now concludes today's dedication ceremony. All guests are invited to attend morning tea, located in the Captain Saunders courtyard on my left. So we'd like to just thank you for your attendance this morning, and please enjoy the rest of your day.